There are a few verses in the Tanakh, or Old Testament, that are translated very differently in the Jewish and Christian translations. Zechariah 12 verse 10 is one of those verses, specifically the middle part of this verse. The Jewish JPS reads, "And they shall look unto me because they have thrust him through." Now the Christian King James Version translation reads, "And they shall look upon me whom they have pierced." Notice that these two verses are very different. The first thing that we have to do is determine who is speaking in this passage, the me, and who is he speaking about, the they. At the beginning of this verse, we find out who they are, as it reads, "And I will pour upon the house of David and upon the inhabitants of Jerusalem." The they are the inhabitants of Jerusalem, the house of David. For the speaker, we find our answer in verse 4, which states, "On that day says Yahweh, I will." So we find out that the speaker is Yahweh, the me. According to the Jewish translation, Jerusalem will look unto Yahweh because of the one that they thrust through. But in the Christian translation, Jerusalem will look upon Yahweh who they pierced. Now, to uncover which translation is correct, if either are, we are going to have to get into the grammar of the Hebrew of this passage. The Hebrew text reads, "Vehibitu alai et asher dakaru." In this passage are two verbs, vehibitu and dakaru. Vehibitu includes the vav as a prefix, meaning and it also has a vav suffix, meaning they, which, by the way, is the subject of the verb. And then we have the verb, will look. So this verb, vehibitu, means and they will look. The second verb is dakaru. This has a vav suffix, again meaning they, again the subject of the verb, and then the verb meaning pierced. So dakaru means they pierced. The next two words that we will look at are Eli and Asher. Eli is the preposition el, meaning toward, and the suffix yod, meaning me. The word Asher is the relative participle, which means who. The last word that we need to examine is the word et. But before we do this, let's first pretend that this word is not in the text. What we now have at this point is a very simple sentence. And they will look toward me who they pierced. And if you'll notice, this is exactly how many Christian translations translate this passage. At this point, it's going to be necessary to have a basic understanding of syntax or sentence structure. Here's a sentence. John read a book. In this sentence, read is the verb. John, who is the one performing the action, is the subject of the verb. And book is what is receiving the action of the verb and is the object of the verb. In this case, the word book is an indefinite object because it is just a book. However, if we change the subject of the verb to the book, it becomes a definite object because it is speaking about a specific book. Now, let's take a look at the different parts of the passage in question. The verb is look, the subject of the verb is they, and the object of the verb is me, who they pierced. But this creates a problem. The word me is a definite object. It's a specific person. Therefore, Hebrew grammar requires that the word et be placed before this object of the verb, as the word et always precedes the definite object of a verb. But the word et does not appear here, but instead it appears after it. In fact, this is the word we removed earlier. Now me is no longer part of the object of the verb. Instead, it is just who they pierced. While they are looking toward Yahweh, the object of their looking is the one who they pierced. And this verse should be translated something like, and they looked toward me about who they pierced. The next phrase helps to confirm this translation, as it then says, and they will mourn over him. Who is the him? It has to be the one they pierced. It is important to notice that this phrase does not say, and they mourned over me, which is what it should say if Yahweh was the one being pierced.